the origins of much of London's politics were in the 17th, 18th, 16th, and 16th centuries, really. And what emerged from that that period was a sense in which popular politics, in the absence of democracy, was necessarily enacted on the streets through riot, through small-scale local government. The essence of all British government, but London government more than anything else, was the parish for half a millennia. And the parish, in London could be 700 people, or it could be 10,000 people. But the point is that parishes were immensely powerful and immensely community focused. If you wanted poor relief, if you were about to have a child and needed linen, if you were old and elderly and needed care, the parish was where you went. When you paid your taxes, the vast majority of your taxes went to the parish. If you looked for policing, it was at parish level. So, in part, what's going on in that longer history of London is a series of communities that were both intensely disorderly, but also intensely ordered at a local level. And that actually creates a kind of matrix in which the culture of 19th century London evolves. In part, it evolves towards disorder as that parish system gradually dissolves, as the boroughs begin to rise, as the nation state attempts to impose on top of the parochial system new forms of social welfare. I mean, post-war, the National Health Service, perhaps preeminently, but in that 100 years between 1850 and 1950, a whole series of institutions of education, of health, of social care. And what it seems to me lies, what that implies about London as 8 million people, is that the tensions around locality, of people coming in and going out, of how you think about community, are unique to London. They aren't quite what you find in rural villages, for all the fact that London is supposed to be a city of villages. And it is, I suspect, not what you find in Paris, where the relationship between police and community, for example, is different, where the locus of authority lies perhaps slightly further away from the person on the street. When you then get into periods of mass migration or large-scale migration, that history of locality, that history of community and identity, and I'll talk a little bit about identity in a minute, is going to be challenged in new and different ways precisely because it comes up against or has to engage with half a millennia of a kind of localism that's unique to London. And I did want to simply add that part of that story of the parish is that from the vast majority of the last 500 years, arguably, everybody had an identity, and it was called a parochial settlement. If you were born in a parish, if you married into a parish, if you were apprenticed into a particular parish, you had a right, a claim to it. And what occurred over the course of the 18th and early 19th century is that the poor gradually evolved into to develop a right to relief, a right to care, a right to essentially have a claim on that parish. And the parishes of the 18th and early 19th century in particular are frequently described as mini welfare states. And that sense of identity does a really interesting thing. It kind of takes people from a situation where parish and community was associated with religion to one where parish, locality, and community is actually much more fully mapped onto parish relief, poor relief, and medical care. So that by the time you get to the 19th century, when they start moving away from that system of settlement and local identity, you nevertheless have a well-established and well-articulated sense of localism that is, as far as one can tell, within certainly Western Europe, unique to Britain and arguably uniquely articulated in London.